Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a very different kind of source material. We're unpacking a highly detailed, deeply symbolic, and totally surreal dream diary entry that chronicles a father's spiritual awakening. I want to set a hushed, almost mysterious tone for our time together today because the text we're analyzing operates entirely on dream logic. It's a space where the deeply spiritual just crashes right into mundane, everyday reality.
Let me ask you something. Have you ever had a dream so vivid, so terrifying, yet so profoundly spiritual, that it literally left you with goosebumps at 3 a.m.? Well, that is exactly the state our narrator finds themselves in. We're going to guide you through this eerie, unpredictable atmosphere, exploring the psychological and spiritual layers of a dream that, honestly, feels way more like an epic quest than a simple night's sleep.
So, let's start with Act 1, the stagnant reality.
Picture this. Our narrator finds themselves inside an unfathomably large, damp warehouse. Think about the sheer size of a grand sports hall. The sensory details here are absolutely crucial to the story. It's gloomy, it's damp, and the narrator specifically compares the cold atmosphere to a tense Harry Potter encounter, specifically that scene where Harry first confronts a giant snake. Right in the center of this massive gloom sits a broad table, and it's neatly arranged with Buddhist altar equipment. Up above, taking up practically half the space, is a massive loft just completely covered in architectural books and tools. And hanging over this whole bizarre scene is a looming threat. They're facing eviction from this massive building, totally drowning in a sense of financial despair and utter hopelessness about the future.
Now, to really get what's going on here, we need to meet the eclectic group of people trapped in this warehouse. We have the dreamer, who is acting as our narrator and guide. There's the father, a Buddhist monk who's really struggling to reach his next spiritual stage. Then we have a highly specific supporting cast, an old friend from the past, an autistic relative accompanied by his mother, and an intellectually disabled younger friend whom the narrator used to look after. This diverse group essentially forms the emotional core of the journey ahead of us.
And I want you to notice this highly specific number, 80,000 yen. Among the Buddhist statues on the wall sits this bizarre, oddly shaped padlock and key set that the father bought for 80,000 yen. In the logic of the dream, this distorted padlock isn't just an object. It actually serves as the physical, tangible manifestation of the father's spiritual blockage and his financial ruin. Which brings us to Act 2, the catalyst.
Okay, this next part is absolutely wild. The dreamer, alongside two of the father's disciples, decides to physically touch this strange 80,000 yen padlock. The second they do, a flat bowl of water sitting right next to it undergoes a terrifying transformation. The surface of the water rapidly thickens and turns into jelly. Through that weird kind of dream intuition, the narrator instantly realizes this isn't just a magic trick, it's a profound spiritual curse. This jelly phenomenon is the literal root cause hindering the father's life as a monk. It's the visual proof of why everything has been so stagnant.
Let's move right into Act 3, the mentor's call. Out of nowhere, the warehouse just begins to fill up with people, and a key figure emerges from the crowd. He's a man in his late 40s who received direct teachings from the founder of the Sect of Buddhism. But, keeping with the dream's perfect blend of the spiritual and the everyday, he also works in the construction industry. This gives him a background very similar to the father's. Now, this mentor sees the unseen. He confirms that the padlock is actively crushing their lives. But here's the catch. When they talk about simply throwing the lock away, the terrifying jelly phenomenon only gets worse. They can't just throw the problem in the trash. They literally have to confront it spiritually.
So, here is the turning point of the whole explainer. The psychic turns to the father and asks a really penetrating question. How did you become a monk in the first place? Which sect do you believe in most? And what sect do you most want to learn again? This question right here is the emotional hinge of the entire journey. It forces the father to look past his immediate financial ruin and remember his core spiritual purpose.
The father just mutters this simple response, the seventh. The moment those words leave his lips, the stagnation totally shatters. It's like a switch flips. The dream shifts into high gear, and the decision is made right then and there to go find the founder of the seventh sect. Suddenly, the roughly 20 people in the warehouse begin this frantic, collective effort to clear out all the lumber and tools. Instead of waiting around for the father to give orders, everyone moves proactively. They are physically clearing away the mental and spiritual blockage.
And this just brilliantly highlights the wonderful absurdity of dream logic. Think about it. How do you fund a grand, soul-saving spiritual pilgrimage? Well, apparently you sell your warehouse tools on a flea market app. The dreamer practically proposes listing the items right then to pay for their travel and lodging. At first, the father is super resistant and stubborn, asking for details with this defiant attitude. But the dreamer recalls that their destination is somewhere to the left on the map, like Okinawa or Fukuoka, and they're seeking the seventh sect's founder, who is someone in their 50s with a name written in katakana.
That takes us to Act 4, the chaotic passage. The second they step out of the warehouse, the environment completely shifts. They aren't in Japan anymore. It's a developing foreign landscape. The narrator compares it to somewhere in Latin America, Vietnam, or the Philippines. They board these large and small jeeps, and the chaos is just immediate. Cars are driving on the right side of the road, but they're constantly dodging oncoming traffic in the exact same lane. Outside the windows, locals are playfully throwing plastic bottles at kids. It's this scene of chaotic, idyllic, rural life.
But inside the Jeep, the spiritual stakes are causing intense interpersonal conflict. The sixth sect psychic is up front, trying to explain the history of the sect like a tour guide, but the father and the old friend are just chatting disrespectfully in the back, totally ignoring him. The psychic gets furious. He outright questions if the father actually has the resolve to change his life. This heavy, incredibly uncomfortable atmosphere causes the autistic relative in the back to start crying. The mother demands the father apologize to the psychic to fix the mood, but the father, still crippled by the stubborn fear of change, outright refuses. Right in the middle of all that bickering, the text gives us a profoundly grounding and deeply relatable moment. The intellectually disabled younger friend is sitting next to the narrator, just staring out the window with tears in his eyes. See, in the logic of the dream, this young man's parents have passed away, and to join this long-term spiritual journey, he had to permanently cancel all of his earthly contracts back home. There's literally no turning back for him. He's mourning the heavy sacrifice and the utter loneliness of giving up everything for this journey. It really grounds this surreal narrative in genuine, palpable human emotion.
It's amazing to look at the timeline compression here, which is so typical of how dreams function, right? They move seamlessly from the gritty, practical weeks of clearing that massive warehouse to the days spent selling items on flea market apps, shrinking down to the chaotic hours riding in jeeps through a foreign land, and finally narrowing down to the mere moments before arriving at their ultimate spiritual sanctuary.
And finally, Act 5, the unfinished awakening.
The visual and emotional contrast from where they started to where they end up is honestly breathtaking. The father's starting point was that dark, damp, cluttered warehouse, totally plagued by a cursed padlock and financial dread. But as they arrive at their destination, the environment radically shifts. They step onto a bright, pristine, meticulously manicured ancient path. The text specifically points out that the atmosphere here exudes 4,000 years of Chinese history.
The details here are so incredibly vivid. The path is lined with beautifully trimmed plants. The stone lanterns aren't old and crumbling. They're flawlessly polished and cared for. Up ahead on the path, local elders are gathered around, quietly listening to the teachings of the mysterious founder of the seventh sect. The chaos of the Jeep is entirely gone. Salvation for the father is quite literally just steps away.
And then, boom, 3 a.m. The narrator abruptly wakes up, right before seeing the father reach salvation. The abruptness is just jarring. The narrator notes waking up with lingering, eerie, spiritual goosebumps. They're so spooked by the profound resonance of the dream that they absolutely refuse to close their eyes in the silent dark. They're forced to turn on the lights, put on background music, and immediately document the dream, finishing the diary entry right at 3 a.m.
Which leaves us, the readers of this fascinating text, hanging on a massive unresolved chord. The father's journey to the seventh sect was interrupted by the waking world, and it forces us to ask, if you woke up just steps away from salvation, what would your soul do next? Thank you so much for exploring this remarkable dream diary with me today. It's such a brilliant reminder of how our minds structure our deepest fears and our highest spiritual hopes. Keep questioning, keep learning, and we'll see you next time.